One social media platform that has been under scrutiny for disinformation is Meta. Canada's federal government is in talks with the company about returning online news to its Canadian platform. Meta banned news from appearing there after Ottawa launched its Online News Act in 2023. It required tech giants like Meta to pay media outlets for news content they share on their platforms. So for more on especially these conversations that are apparently going on between the federal government and this tech company, we've brought Carmi Levy onto the show, a tech analyst and journalist as well. Carmi, thank you so much for being with me this morning.
So great to be with you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so give me a sense of what you're hearing from sources and in your world around the state of these negotiations between Canada and Meta.
Well, they're still fairly early stage, and we're not really hearing a lot of detail about precisely what is being discussed, if there's any kind of dollar figure being thrown around, what the framework might look like. But the federal government's been telegraphing very clearly that they've always been open to these conversations, and now it looks like we are in those initial stages. The timing is not coincidental because obviously we are in the run-up to the CUSMA review, and we know full well that the Online News Act, as well as the Online Streaming Act, the Digital Services Tax, these are all things that, policy decisions by the government that signaled a get tough approach to big tech companies that have emerged as an irritant, an annoyance to the U.S. government as we sort of move forward with trade negotiations. So in advance of those, federal government is kind of sending out messaging saying that maybe they're at the point, we got rid of the Digital Services Tax last year, the Online News Act might be the next one to be softened, and so it's a signal now that they're backing away from the precipice, essentially allowing technology companies now kind of back in, not pushing back against them as they had been during the Trudeau leadership era.
Well, and YouTube struck a deal pretty quick with Canada in order to allow content to continue to be there. So there's either a deal that could be struck or perhaps the law could be rescinded as other nations have done. Which avenue do you think is more likely?
I don't think anybody's writing a check here. Yeah, YouTube, owned by Google, agreed to pay $100 million into a fund for Canadian media in order to comply with the Online News Act, and they have been doing so ever since 2023. But I think in this case, I think that's what ticks the Americans off significantly. That's what bothers them, is that that Canada has the temerity to draw a line in the sand for American technology companies who should be allowed, in the eyes of the U.S. government, to operate unfettered in any country they wish without having to pay for the privilege, especially given, as they say, the benefits they bring to the relationship. They drive traffic, they raise awareness, they create a much larger market than would otherwise be possible. So I don't think this is going to involve money, ultimately. I think there's going to be some kind of opening up, looking back at the Online News Act and perhaps changing the terms to soften them somewhat for these American companies.
And Carney certainly has signaled that he's at least open to that, partly, we would assume, because of the urgency around the current trade war that continues to be going on with the United States, the vulnerability that Canadians are under due to the fact that these are American companies. And then finally, this new information now that the U.S. is one of the main sources of disinformation online. Talk to us about the consequences of all this when we're looking at a platform that so many Canadians are on, where news organizations from Canada are not showing their stuff, but we know that there's disinformation there.
The absence of news content on platforms like Facebook and Instagram for the past 2.5 years has essentially thrown fuel on the fire of disinformation. And it has, if we're worried about disinformation, misinformation, the spread of deep fakes, the lower news literacy of audiences because of that, it's largely been attributable to this absence. And so certainly reintroducing that content on two of the major platforms that Canadians are or had been using for news discovery would certainly contribute, or at least maybe protect Canadians to a certain extent against the accelerating spread of disinformation. It's a good thing by anyone's definition.
Tech journalist Carmi Levy joining me here on CBC Morning Live. Thank you, Carmi.
Appreciate it, Chris.